Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology, and today I wanted to go over a topic that came up in one of my recent sessions. And it was a very interesting session. Of course, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this individual who is dismissive avoidant, he had gone over a lot of the triggers. We were talking about triggers, and a lot of the triggers that comes up that makes him, when he's interested in somebody, makes him not want to pursue this person, or if it's in a long-term relationship, he feels like he's checking out of the relationship. And I've had this conversation with other patients before, and so I looked back at all the things that I remember, and I put some of those into a compiled list, body language. And I think that's very interesting because I think a lot of people don't address this, but this is common and this does show up in sessions. And so why this is important is because it's subconscious for a lot of individuals. The person who is showing this body language, they're not doing it on purpose. A lot of people know avoidant individuals are very triggered by being, nagged, for example, or being pressured to do something, or continuous questions, whatever it may be. Avoidant individuals are triggered by that. People know that. But sometimes there's a lot of body language that avoidant individuals can be triggered by, or feel a little uncomfortable around, or feel like they're not welcome. And so they feel less willing to express their feelings and love. Often this is because to them, a lot of these triggers, and I'll explain it, in more detail, it can show disrespect, or they perceive it that way. And I apologize for the noise. I'm having some work done in my house, and so you're going to hear that a little bit, so I apologize for that. But the first one that a lot of avoidant individuals feel triggered by is when an individual is crossing their arms. This one happens a lot. I see it in couples sessions a lot. They don't like when their partner crosses their arms, or feels like it's very obvious that there's a lot of maybe like a disagreement, but it's not being said out loud. And the reason why avoidant individuals don't like when the arms are crossed is because it makes it feel like you're not interested, or you're upset, or perhaps you're angry. And I think another reason why a lot of avoidant individuals don't like this, well, I know, which has been shared to me and can be evaluated through our sessions, is because it makes the avoidant individual feel like you might be uninterested in what they have to say. Seems very closed off. So crossed arms, okay? Especially if you're upset. And maybe when it shows up a lot when you're like asking your partner for something. Like maybe you're like, hey, can we do Valentine's Day together? And then they're like, yeah, I'm sure we can, but can we do it later in the day, or can we do it the day after? I'm doing a double shift, or I don't know what's going to happen. Let's say the person is like a firefighter and they, are doing 12 hours, and maybe you don't like their answer. And so you're listening to them, but your arms are crossed. That is very triggering for them. And let's say it's a person that they're friends with, but they want to pursue. If when you're talking to them, your arms are crossed, they're going to think, okay, this person doesn't like me. I'm not going to initiate romantic expression and interest towards them, okay? The next one is rolling eyes. I think a lot of people know this, but this is it's incredibly common that a lot of individuals do this when they're upset. I see it a lot. This is really common with anxious preoccupied. It does happen with fearful avoidant, but I was working with a couple really recently that this was happening a lot in session, and I could see the anxious preoccupied rolling eyes, getting really upset, and the dismissive avoidant was getting more and more withdrawn and like unwilling to express himself. And this one is extremely disrespectful, and actually avoidants do not tolerate this. This particular one, the rolling eyes, is something that actually can make or break a relationship. When I mean make or break it, I have actually seen avoidants are like, if you do that one more time, this relationship is not happening. Whether it's wrong or right is up to discussion, but avoidants don't like this, okay? This is especially triggering for dismissive avoidance. Crossing arms is triggering for both, but rolling eyes is more triggering for dismissive avoidance. Fearful avoidance, yes, but not as much as dismissive avoidance. They do not like this one, okay? The next one is like excessively on a device or a phone, or even like a book. Excessively having overly engaged in something while they are talking, or you guys are having a discussion together. Avoidant individuals feel like this is very disrespectful because it feels like you're overly focused on something during their conversation that could be put away for later. And so something they feel is insignificant, unless it's like like something serious or important, they feel like something, not significant or not of priority is still being prioritized over them. And some people do this, like anxious, preoccupied, especially, but I'm not picking on you, by the way, if you aren't anxious, preoccupied, but I've seen this where it's like sometimes they do it to give their partner like a lesson, or like outwardly show like, I'm not interested, I don't want to hear you, just being on my phone, like, go away, I don't want to talk to you because you did X, Y, and Z and I'm upset at you. I see that sometimes happen, and it can be incredibly frustrating for the dismissive avoidant. It signals a lack of focus and interest as well. Like if you're doing it while they're talking, especially if it's like a first or second date, which in America that can be, kind of rude, but avoidant individuals feel like this is discouraging a meaningful connection. And this is really triggering, actually, for fearful avoidance. Fearful avoidance, this is more triggering than dismissive avoidance, okay? The next one is leaning away. Body language is leaning away. And I know a lot of people don't mean to do this. Like if you have social anxiety, you do some of these things, like the phone or even the crossing arms or leaning away. You're doing it and you're not trying to be disrespectful. And so it's very important that if you are doing these things and you're noticing it, just bring up, by the way, I've been diagnosed with social anxiety. I'm just letting you know that sometimes I do this. I'm working on it, but it's nothing against you. Like if that's some of the reasons, you can mention it, just a little bit random about social anxiety. But if you're leaning away from the conversation, it creates a physical and emotional barrier. It creates a distance, right? And so engaging with body language shows interest, and avoidant individuals, actually particularly dismissive avoidant individuals, are very aware of, actually, especially male dismissive avoidants are very aware of their partner's interest in them. Like if their partner is listening to them because of the respect perspective. And so leaning away makes them feel like, okay, you don't respect what I'm saying. This is probably not going to go anywhere. And sometimes it's important to realize that sometimes avoidant individuals may have a very high expectation of respect. And so if you feel like they're picking on every little thing with your body language and you're not doing it on purpose, just tell them, I need you to understand I'm just like this. I can work on it, but it doesn't mean I'm not interested in you. Just if that ever comes up, by the way. So leaning away, this is very triggering for avoidant individuals. The next one is a disappointed facial expression without saying what's bothering you. This is very, very triggering, okay? If you're upset about something and you're showing it instead of telling them, the avoidant individual takes that it's triggering for a couple of reasons. First of all, they may perceive that you're doing it on purpose. Even though you might not be, they might perceive it that way. You might be trying to make them read your mind, and that can be incredibly frustrating for avoidance, right? The next one is if it's a fearful avoidant, it makes them feel like you're... Dismissive avoidants do this too, but fearful avoidants don't really like to hurt people's feelings, a lot of them. And so it makes them feel like your feelings are hurt and you're trying to manipulate them by hurting their feelings and get something out of them. Like maybe you're trying to make them adjust or submit to whatever you want, right? I'm not saying you're doing that, but that's how they feel. And so it's very important that if you're disappointed, say what's bothering you. You can have your expression, you're allowed to, but say it. And so that you can verbalize, I'm not trying to make you read your mind. I'm not trying to make you read my mind. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm just expressing myself. You're allowed to have your facial expressions, right? But mention what it is. I didn't like that you always walk ahead of me, right? A lot of avoidants, they do that. And a lot of them stop doing it when they get closer to you and more connected. But if you guys are in a public space, sometimes they're walking ahead of you, and maybe that made you annoyed. And maybe later when you guys were talking, you had like a really disappointed, annoyed facial expression. Just tell them what it is that's bothering you, okay? The last one is sighing without saying what's bothering you. For example, just making like a big sigh, being really disappointed, or, you know what I mean, like sighing and not saying exactly what it is. The reason why avoidant individuals don't like this one, the expression, the sound, is because sometimes they think you're doing it on purpose. And so if you are not doing it on purpose and you notice that you're doing it, just tell them, hey, I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm just disappointed, right? But letting out like a really big sigh and just being really upset, that might make them feel like you're trying to, you're either distancing yourself, you're upset, you're annoyed, and you're not saying something. And an avoidant individual thinks that, okay, you're not interested or you're not happy, and you're not telling me, so I don't know what to do, right? And so it's just something to be aware of. I'm not saying you can't be human. I'm just saying some of these things can be triggering to avoidant individuals, okay? I hope this video was helpful. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.